Hey guys, Gavin Hawk here. Today I'm going to take apart our Deadlock. A couple of reasons. One is so that, of course, you can see how the mechanism works and what we've done, but also so you can take your knife apart and clean it. So this one here is a single edge. It's got the brass accents, brass frame, of course our grip clip. Yeah, well, let's get right into it. So the first thing to do is to derail or unlock the blade. So you just hold onto the blade, unlock it, and now the blade's loose. So just hold that in there. If you have one with black screws, it's going to take an Allen key. But if you have all silver screws, it's going to be a T7 for the countersunk screws and a T6 for the button head screws. Of course, the screw back here on the behind the clip is what the little access hole's for. You just get in there like that. That one actually stays in there. It's trapped by the clip. So anyways, just get it loose. We'll take this one out. We'll take the screw over there. Two button heads out, and if you just purchased a Deadlock out of this batch, you'll be receiving this tool here. This is a T6 for the front two screws. If you got all black screws, I did not provide an Allen key. Maybe I will in the future, but for right now, hopefully you have an Allen key. As well as I included a couple of internal parts just in case you take it apart and they fall on the floor and you can never find them again. So anyways, here's the front or the back side that holds the stop plate. You can see there's a big pocket in here where the stop plate goes. And this first piece here is the stop plate. Now sometimes it's a little tricky to get this off. There's close tolerances here on the holes and the pins. What you want to do is grab the blade and just kind of you lift up on it. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but you kind of lift and use that to pry. You don't want to pry too hard. You just want to kind of loosen it up, especially if you have a brass frame, as the blade will make little dings in the track, which is okay. You just don't want to get too aggressive about it. So here's the stop plate. And so let's see if this thing will focus right. You can see there's an angle cut there and here, and they're on an angle like that. So that's important to note. And then you can see here this stop pin. You can see, let me get this tool here. You can see here that it has a, whoops, come back. I feel like I'm doing this in a mirror and it's not going to focus. Come on. Focus. Alright, well, it doesn't want to focus. Anyways, you can see that the stop pin here is conical shaped. And so what that does is when this is sliding and that stop pin engages the stop plate, that shoves the blade down and it shoves the blade over. And so that's what keeps the knife solid, so that you don't have any play in any direction, at least, you know, up and down and side to side. The actual lock that stops it from coming back in is a different mechanism. So anyways, we'll take the stop plate back off. So the mechanism is actually in the blade. You can see it right there. Maybe it'll focus if I get my hands. Come here. There we go. Okay. So you can see there, that's the mechanism. And if I tilt it just a little bit here, you'll see that the ball, this ball right here, is moving. So that's the actual lock, is this ball. And so once that goes beyond the tang here, come on, that's what stops it from going back into the knife. You can see here on the knife that there's a pin right here, and that's what that ball locks against. So once this gets to here, this may not work without all the parts. There, that works. So now the ball has protruded out and is engaged in that pin, and that's what stops the blade from coming back in. Alright, so let's look at this mechanism a little bit closer. You can see that there's this block here that actually has a lock angle on it, and so that angle is what forces the ball out. So then when this comes all the way forward, you can see there's a little dip there, and that's what allows the ball to disappear so that it can travel back and forth. There's also on this side, you can see there's three, how to best show that, yeah. There's three pins there. Two of them, this pin and this one, are attached to the two moving blocks, and the stop pin has another pin here in the center, and what that does is that engages the thrust blocks, and we'll get to those in a little bit. But back to the two blocks here. So we have the lock, and then we have the D-lock. So as the knife comes forward, there's a spring that hits the pin on the lock, and that spring then engages the mechanism and locks it. And then to unlock it, there's a hook, and we'll show this later, but the hook grabs the pin on the D-lock from the underneath side. So as you start to load the mechanism, you'll be loading the spring against the stop pin, and then as you get to the last little bit, the D-lock or the trip plate will engage this pin and pull it back, which unlocks it, which allows the ball to come in, and then the knife will shoot back. And I think I just cut myself just a little bit there. I think it's okay, it's not going to bleed. Yeah, I don't do this with sharp knives generally. Generally I assemble them, then sharpen them, then ship them. So I suggest when you take it apart, maybe you should tape the blade or put something on the blade. And there's my girlfriend laughing just in the background. She can't stop. No, I don't think it's going to bleed, so I think we're good. Alright, so there's that. We'll come back to this and we're going to take it all apart. But for now, let's put it back in the knife. Or, well, first, so inside the knife here, there's a spring hook right there. We'll see this again later, but for now you can see there's a spring hook there, and there's a spring hook right there. And then you can see on the trip plate, which is the part that's moving right there. Come on, come back into focus. There we go. So that's the trip plate, and you can see right there is a little hook. So there's one on that end, and there's one on this end. So that's what unlocks it. So we'll put this back together here. So as the knife is coming up, this pin here, you can see the top of the pin. So the top of that pin is engaging that spring hook. So when it gets to about there, it engages. You can see the mechanism kind of got powered. Now there's spring pressure on it, so as it starts to go forward, oh, I guess we're in lock up there. So now the spring has applied pressure to this lock, which has engaged it, which has pressed the ball out. Now I'm going to manipulate the button on the back side, if I can. Yep. Do this without anything flying anywhere. So what's going to happen is as I move the button, the other hook is going to come and apply force on that pin on the underneath side. Oops. Let's put it back here. And so that's what's going to de-lock it. So you'll start to move that back, and then you can see now it's unlocked, and then the blade would shoot back. Obviously the reverse happens on the other end, except on this end, the spring is on this side, and the de-locking hook is on this side. So this block here is powered, which goes through that little swivel, which transfers the power to that side, which then springs the lock over and pushes the ball out on that engages the dowel pin, the lock face, on the closed position. And somebody's calling me. Okay, I'm back. So, yep, so that's the dowel pin for the lock face on the lock closed. And then again, I'm gonna activate the button on the back side, start to pull it towards myself, and then it unlocks the mechanism. I feel like I'm gonna cut myself again. Oh, there we go. So that's how that unlocks. Alright, so now we're going to take this apart. Now, generally, to clean it, you shouldn't have to take this apart. You should be able to just blow it out. But just in case something sticky gets in there and you do have to take it apart, I'll show you how to do that. As well as this is probably as far as you need to take the knife apart. You can get in and blow all this out. If the knife wasn't working, one of the things you need to make sure of is that these little spring hooks are moving easily and they're not gritty or messed up. There's one on both sides. As long as those are working and this trip plate is moving, everything's fine. And so from this point you could just blow it out, maybe a little air canister, or if you have a air compressor, even better. So, and do not oil the knife, because if you oil it, then you're going to attract dirt and you're just going to have to clean it again. So anyways, we're going to take the parts out of the blade. There's a small E-clip on the back here, and that's what holds everything in together. The stop pin is actually, the stop pin holds everything together, and then the E-clip holds the stop pin in. It's not too difficult to get this off, although I have lost a couple. So I do include a couple of these in your little bag when you get the knife, so that if you do end up losing this, you have a spare. Let's get that little guy off. Alright, so now all the pieces will just fall out, so we'll just dump them. So here's the blade. You can see that there's the two tracks for the two control pins. We've got a hole in the center, and we've got a boss there that swivel goes on. Also, you can see there's a cutout there for the ball to travel in. I also included a couple extra balls, because I'm always losing them. That's not even funny. My girlfriend's again laughing at me.
It's a little funny.
So, alright, so there's one of those in the bag as well. So this is the lock. Nothing too fancy. You can see that's the lock face, that angled part there. And then of course the pin. And then the cutout for the swivel to engage. Here's the swivel. Pretty simple, just has two lobes on it and a hole in the center. We've got the D-lock, pretty simple, just a block with a pin, and then it's got a pocket in it for the swivel to engage. And then the stop pin, which is pretty simple, just got a spot for the E-clip. It's got the angle on it that engages the stop plate. And if you're curious, the number 1 there in the center, so the way I adjust the knife is different size stop pins, and so the last assembly I just try on different stop pins until I get the right lockup. So anyways, that's what the number is. So we'll put this back together. The way you do this, first you drop the ball in, goes in like that, put the lock in, just falls in like that. And then the D-lock falls in like that. You can't put these in wrong. There's only one way for them to go. Now this part here theoretically is supposed to be symmetrical, but I've been having some problems with that. If you look at it, oops, come here. Oh my gosh, maybe I should have put a couple of those in the bag too. If you look here, if I can get the zoom, you can see there's a little dimple there. That's the orientation mark, so that goes in the lock. So anyways, you kind of put the D-lock one direction, put the lock the other direction, put the swivel in like that. If the swivel, if it doesn't want to go in, you can just move the lock a little bit and it'll fall right into place, or the D-lock, depending on which way you put it in. So anyways, there are the three pieces for that. And then the stop pin, of course, goes in last. That holds it all together. Just hold the stop pin when you flip it over until you get the E-clip, and it just slides on pretty easily, snaps into place, and now we're all back together. Yeah, okay. One interesting thing about this is this was the first OTF to use a lock in the blade. All the other OTFs use a lock at this end and a lock at this end. Instead, what we did is we have a lock face on either end, but the actual lock travels with the blade. And then another interesting thing about this is this mechanism isn't powered at all. There's no spring at all powering the mechanism in between open and closed. So from here to here, there's nothing on the blade to slow it down. There's no lock that's trying to engage. It only engages the last little bit when it hits that spring hook, and then that powers the mechanism at the last second. So anyways, okay, now we're going to take this side apart. Oh, one interesting thing, so or important note rather, that the pocket clip, I wouldn't suggest taking that off. I have red Loctite on both those screws so they don't come loose. There shouldn't be a reason to take that apart. If something's damaged on the clip or you have a problem with it, just send it back to me and I'll fix it. But if you do want to do it, just be forewarned, there is red Loctite on those, so they're going to be a little bit trickier. So be careful not to strip out the screws. Same thing on the button. You can see these two screws right here hold the button together, or hold the button on. Those have red Loctite on them, don't take them out. This set screw in the center also has red Loctite. That one you don't want to take apart because that sets the height for the rollers that are underneath the button that make the knife so smooth. So don't adjust that. Alright, so now on to the springs. So the way the springs work, and this one is actually a hard firing spring, which is an option that we do. I don't personally like the harder firing springs because the harder it fires, the harder it is to manipulate the button. But anyways, this one has the harder springs in it, so it's a little bit trickier to get on and off, but you'll get the idea. You want to hold the button on this, either open or closed, but you want to hold the button, and then you can get in there with the tool and the spring comes off like that. So this spring is pretty interesting. So what we've done here, instead of having a spring with a hook on it, which is normally the case, the hook is the weakest part of the spring. And so as you're putting pressure on that hook, it stretches this part of the metal, plus it wants to bend your hook out. So most springs, when they break on the hook. So what we've done is we're using, there's actually a screw there that matches the pitch of, or the winding of the spring, and it threads into the spring, and it's what they call a spring anchor. I think I have, let me grab one here. So this is, that's what that looks like. Looks like just a regular screw, but the pitch matches the spring winding. So anyways, so there's 4 of those, 2 on each end. And then we have the thrust blocks. So of course the hole that goes through the block is big enough for the springs to go through, but not the spring anchors, and so that's what stops it. But you'll see there's a groove in the center. Get this here. So there's a groove in the center, and then there's 2 turn down sections on either end. So that engages. Well, actually, you know, that'll be easier once I take this apart, or maybe I've got another trip plate here somewhere that I can show. I don't see one close. Well, let me go get a trip plate. If I would have thought this through, I would have had a trip plate waiting there. But anyways, so here's the trip plate. You can see right here, that's the little hook I was talking about earlier that de-locks it, or whatever, unlocks it. And then you can see these 2 islands right here that are left. And you can also see they have a little bit of an undercut angle to them. Yeah, there we go. So those 2 little bosses on this spring hook into that, so that's what holds the spring in place, or the thrust blocks in place. And then of course does it on either side, so now I can pull this and gauge it, and then you can see the thrust blocks there. And then the stop pin, the underside of the stop pin, you can see that this, that thrust block, that's what engages that pin, and that's what applies the force to open and close it. Okay, let's see. Moving on to this, so we'll disassemble this. We'll use the T6 here. So on all the handle screws I use blue Loctite, so when you put it back together you'll want to use blue Loctite. And again, you'll want to put some type of tape or something on the blade while you're doing this. So far I've cut myself twice. I just poked myself on my thumb, and so I've got a little bit of blood there. Don't normally do that, but you know, since there's a camera, I cut myself. My DNA is going to be all over this knife. Hopefully nobody uses this one in a crime. Alright, so then to get this off, you just, this one's a little tight. You're trying to push it down like that. Oh, it's really tight, come on. There we go. Okay, so here's the frame. You can see that all of these pins are pressed in so they don't go anywhere or move or twist. And then you can see the 2 locks, or the lock faces rather, the 2 dowel pins. So we've got one here and one there. And then the back side, there's not much. There's just a cutout in the center that allows the control pins to travel. Okay. And then now here you can see the spring hooks a little bit better. There's a dowel pin and then a hidden spring inside. These can be a little bit tricky if you take them out because this pin is going to want to shoot across the room. You shouldn't have to take these out. They should be just fine. Unless somehow you got dirt in there, then of course you're going to want to take those out. Yeah, you can see the trip plate there. You can see an access hole there. That's to take the inlays out, poke those out if needed. I usually use ammonia to clean everything. Doesn't really matter what you use as long as it doesn't leave any residue and it's not sticky. Yeah, so that's how to disassemble it. Now we'll just reassemble it real quick. First we'll take this spring back out of this trip plate. We'll pop that in. You want to make sure that it's straight. You can see that that thrust block's a little crooked, so you want to move it until, just play with it until it seats right. Yeah, so there's that. Then the frame slides back on, just like that. See if I can put this back together without cutting myself. And if you ever do have any problems with your knife, it's not working, you take it apart, you can't figure it out, or you don't want to take it apart, just send it back in, I'll fix it. Alright, so then when you put this back in, you just want to make sure that the lock is in the forward position and then the ball is recessed so that you can slide it in. Otherwise, if it's engaged, it won't go into the frame because the ball is preventing it from doing so. You also want to make sure that the pin, or the stop pin, the underneath part of it, is on the other side of your thrust block. For instance, if you put it together here, you're not going to be able to reassemble the knife because the pin is on the wrong side of the thrust block. So, easy way to do it is just put the blade in on the center of the knife, make sure everything works, take the stop plate, push it on, take this part, the back handle, and let's see, don't forget the screw underneath the pocket clip. Oops, that's the wrong one. Okay, and that's how you disassemble and reassemble it. There's a couple different ways to do this. You can just kind of yank this all the way forward. Sometimes if that doesn't work, you can push the button all the way. Well, let's go ahead and unlock it. You can push the button all the way forward, and then I'll do this off camera. You can kind of flick it open. I prefer just to kind of pull it out. So yeah, there's that. If you have any questions, comments, you can either send me an email or put it in the comments section. If I don't answer it, it's because I didn't see it, so just re-comment or shoot me an email. So yeah, there it is, the Deadlock. Thanks guys, bye.